Turner and I built our lives on hard work and careful planning, not flashy purchases or risky investments. He worked for 30 years as a high school science teacher, and I ran the accounting department at a local manufacturing plant. We never drove luxury cars or took exotic vacations, but we never missed a mortgage payment either. Together, we put away enough for a modest but comfortable retirement. Now that we're both in our 60s, life has taken on a gentler rhythm. Our colonial-style house in the suburbs is fully paid off, sitting on a quiet street lined with maple trees that turn brilliant shades of orange every fall. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Between our pensions and retirement accounts, we bring in about $6,200 a month. Not wealthy by any standard, but enough to cover our needs with a little left over for occasional dinners, out and holiday gifts for the grandchildren. Our days follow a comfortable pattern now. Turner tends his vegetable garden in the backyard, coaxing tomatoes and zucchini from the soil with the same patience he once used to explain chemistry to teenagers. I volunteer at the community library twice a week and meet my walking group at the park on Wednesday mornings. In the evenings, we often sit on the back porch with mugs of tea, watching the cardinals visit our bird feeder. Simple pleasures, but ones we've earned after decades of setting alarm clocks and paying our dues. The only cloud in our peaceful retirement has been our son, Alex. He's 35 now, smart, handsome, with a good job in software development. But when it comes to relationships, he's had a string of disappointments. Turner and I have never interfered or criticized his choices, at least not to his face. But privately, we've worried about his tendency to fall hard and fast for women who seem to view him as more of a project than a partner. I just want him to find someone genuine, I told Turner one evening as we washed dishes side by side. Someone who sees him clearly and loves him anyway, not someone trying to mold him into their ideal. Turner nodded. His hands plunged into soapy water. He'll get there, Robin. He's got a good heart. Eventually, he'll recognize when someone appreciates that. What we didn't know that evening was how soon Alex would be testing this theory, and how painfully it would challenge all of us. It was a crisp Saturday in early October when Alex called, his voice carrying an excitement I hadn't heard in years. "Mom, I've got news. I'm bringing someone to Sunday dinner tomorrow. Her name is Catherine. It's pretty serious this time." My heart leapt with cautious hope. Alex hadn't brought anyone home in over 2 years, not since the messy breakup with Julie, the pharmaceutical sales rep who'd suddenly decided to take a job across the country without even discussing it with him first. "We'll be delighted to meet her," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral despite the questions bubbling up inside me. How long had they been dating? What was she like? Was she kind to him? But I held back, not wanting to overwhelm him with maternal curiosity. "I'll make my pot roast." "She's a vegetarian, Mom," Alex said quickly. "Would that be a problem?" I paused only briefly. "Not at all. I can make a vegetable lasagna instead." "That would be amazing." "Thanks, Mom. I really want this to go well. She's special." After hanging up, I found Turner in the garage, sorting through fishing tackle for an upcoming trip with his retired colleagues. "Alex is bringing a woman to dinner tomorrow," I told him. "Says it's serious." Turner looked up, eyebrows raised. "Well, that's something. Been a while since he's brought anyone around. Her name is Catherine. She's a vegetarian." "Huh," he said, turning a lure over in his palm. "Well, I guess I'll be on my best behavior then." I swatted his arm playfully. "You're always on your best behavior. Just be yourself. That's all Alex needs, for us to be supportive but honest." The next day, I spent the morning preparing, vacuuming the living room, polishing the good silverware we rarely used, and assembling a complex vegetable lasagna with 3 kinds of cheese. Turner set the dining room table, which we typically only used for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and even put a small vase of late-blooming mums from his garden as a centerpiece. At precisely 5 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Turner answered while I quickly removed my apron and smoothed my hair. I heard Alex's familiar laugh in the entryway, followed by a female voice, melodic, confident, with a slight accent I couldn't quite place. When I stepped into the hallway, I saw them. Alex, looking more polished than usual in a button-down shirt I didn't recognize, and beside him, a woman who seemed to radiate composed elegance. Catherine was tall and slender, with dark hair falling in soft waves past her shoulders. She wore a simple navy dress that somehow looked expensive, delicate gold earrings, and an understated watch that caught the light as she extended her hand to me. "Mrs. Winters, it's so wonderful to finally meet you," she said, her smile revealing perfect teeth. "Alex talks about you constantly." Her handshake was firm but not aggressive, her eye contact direct but warm. She handed me a beautifully wrapped gift bag. "Just a small token of appreciation for having me in your home." I liked her immediately, her poise, her thoughtfulness, the way she looked at Alex with what seemed like genuine affection. As we moved to the living room for pre-dinner drinks, I noticed how she gently touched Alex's arm when he spoke, how she laughed at Turner's terrible jokes, and how she asked thoughtful questions about our lives. "Alex mentioned you worked in accounting," she said, accepting a glass of white wine from Turner. "I've always admired people with that kind of precision and attention to detail." 32 years, I confirmed. Nothing glamorous, but it put food on the table and helped. "Put this one through college." I nodded toward Alex, who smiled. "And now you're enjoying a well-deserved retirement," Catherine said, glancing around our comfortable but modest living room. "It must be nice to relax after working so hard for so many years." "We manage," Turner said. "Our needs are simple, and we planned ahead. The house is paid off, and between our pensions and retirement accounts, we live comfortably enough." I noticed something flicker in Catherine's eyes at this, a brief calculation, quickly masked by another warm smile. But I dismissed it as my imagination, perhaps my maternal protectiveness looking for problems where none existed. The conversation flowed easily through dinner. Catherine told us she worked as a marketing director for a cosmetics company, that she'd lived abroad for several years in her 20s, and that she'd met Alex at a charity fundraiser 6 months ago. She was articulate, well-traveled, and seemed genuinely interested in our family stories. "Mom makes the best lasagna in the state," Alex announced as we finished dinner. "I've been bragging about her cooking for weeks." Catherine nodded enthusiastically. "It's absolutely delicious, Mrs. Winters. Would you mind sharing the recipe? I'd love to try making it for Alex sometime." As I served dessert, a simple apple crumble with vanilla ice cream, I watched my son. He looked happy, more at ease than I'd seen him in years. The way he gazed at Catherine made my heart both swell and constrict simultaneously. He was clearly smitten, perhaps even in love. And while everything about this elegant, poised woman seemed perfect on paper, something kept nagging at the edges of my consciousness, a mother's intuition I couldn't quite name. As the evening wound down, Catherine helped clear the table despite my protests. "Please, Mrs. Winters, I insist. My mother always taught me that guests should contribute." Her movements were efficient, graceful, as she stacked plates and gathered silverware. In the kitchen, with Alex and Turner engaged in conversation about a fishing trip in the living room, Catherine moved closer to me at the sink. "This is such a lovely home," she said, handing me a serving bowl. "So comfortable. Alex mentioned you've lived here for nearly 30 years? "That's right," I replied, rinsing the bowl. "Bought it when Alex was just 5. The mortgage is long paid off, thank goodness." "How wonderful," she said, her voice warm, but her eyes scanning the kitchen with an appraising quality I found slightly unsettling. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Real estate in this area has appreciated so much. Properties like this must be worth quite a bit now. I suppose, I said with a shrug. We don't think about it much. It's just home to us. Of course, she nodded, reaching for a dish towel. But it's smart of you both to have such a valuable asset fully paid for. Alex mentioned you have a pension and retirement accounts too? So many people these days haven't planned properly for their future. The question felt oddly personal for a first meeting, but her tone was so conversational it was hard to take offense. We were always careful savers, I said simply. Nothing extravagant, but enough to see us through. That's what I admire about your generation, she said. And though the comment was complimentary, something in her phrasing made me feel suddenly old. Such foresight, such security. Later that night, after they'd left with promises to get together again soon, Turner and I fell into our nighttime routine. As I applied moisturizer at my vanity, Turner sat on the edge of the bed, removing his watch. Well? He asked. What did you think? I met his eyes in the mirror. She's impressive, polished. Alex certainly seems taken with her. But? Turner prompted, knowing me too well to miss the hesitation in my voice. I'm not sure, I admitted. Something feels rehearsed. And did you notice how many questions she asked about our finances? The house? The retirement accounts? Turner chuckled. Come on, Robin. She was making conversation, being interested in our lives. Isn't that what you've always wanted for Alex? Someone who cares about his family? You're right, I sighed, putting down my face cream. I'm probably overthinking. She's certainly accomplished and she seems to make Alex happy. That's what matters, Turner said, climbing under the covers. Our boy deserves some happiness. I nodded, but as I turned off the lamp, I couldn't quite shake a vague uneasiness. Something about Catherine's perfect poise, her careful questions, felt like a performance. But perhaps that was unfair. First meetings were always somewhat performative, everyone on their best behavior, trying to make a good impression. I was probably just being an overprotective mother, looking for flaws in anyone my son brought home. Over the next few weeks, Catherine became a regular presence in our lives. Sunday dinners became a tradition, with Alex bringing her to our home almost every weekend. She never arrived empty-handed, always a bottle of wine, artisanal chocolates, or once, a beautiful hand-painted silk scarf she claimed reminded her of my eyes. You're so thoughtful, Catherine, I said, admiring the scarf's delicate pattern. You shouldn't keep bringing gifts. Nonsense, she smiled, arranging the scarf around my neck with deft fingers. It's my pleasure. You and Turner have been so welcoming, making me feel like part of the family already. Her words warmed me, and I felt a twinge of guilt about my initial reservations. Catherine was unfailingly polite, engaging Turner in conversations about his garden, asking me for family recipes, showing genuine interest in Alex's childhood stories. She laughed at all the right moments, asked thoughtful follow-up questions, and always offered to help with dishes. Yet there were moments, brief, easily dismissed, that kept my maternal radar faintly buzzing. The way her eyes lingered on the antique grandfather clock in our hallway, a family heirloom from Turner's side. That must be quite valuable, she'd remarked casually, or how she'd asked, with seeming innocence, whether we had long-term care insurance, given how expensive assisted living can be these days. Each question on its own seemed reasonable, perhaps even practical, but collectively, they formed a pattern I couldn't quite ignore, a persistent interest in our assets, our financial planning, our provisions for the future. One evening, after they'd left, I found myself in Alex's old bedroom, now converted to a guest room but still containing boxes of his childhood memorabilia. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding a framed photo of Alex at his college graduation, Turner and I flanking him with proud smiles. Am I being unfair to her? I whispered to the empty room. I thought of my own mother, how she'd been cool toward Turner when we first started dating, convinced he wasn't ambitious enough for me. How hurt I'd been by her judgment, her inability to see the kindness, integrity, and quiet intelligence that I loved in him. Was I now doing the same thing to Catherine? Allowing preconceived notions or overprotectiveness to color my perception? The doubt gnawed at me. After all, Catherine was educated, successful, attentive to Alex. She remembered our preferences, engaged in our interests, and seemed to genuinely care for my son. When they were together, Alex looked happier than he had in years, more confident, more settled. Wasn't that what mattered most? I resolved to try harder, to open my heart more fully to the woman my son had chosen. Perhaps my reservations were nothing more than a mother's reluctance to accept that her son had found someone new to put at the center of his life. This resolution lasted exactly 3 weeks and 4 days, until the moment I overheard a conversation that confirmed every instinct I'd been trying to silence. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. Catherine had asked if she could stop by to pick up a family recipe I'd promised her. My grandmother's apple pie that Alex had mentioned was his favorite. I was surprised by the midweek visit, but pleased by her interest in family traditions. "I'll be running errands in your neighborhood anyway," she'd explained over the phone. "Around 3, if that works for you." I had the recipe card ready, along with a cup of tea and some cookies I thought we might share. But when Catherine arrived, she was distracted, repeatedly checking her phone and declining the offer of tea. "I can only stay a moment," she apologized. "Work crisis, but I didn't want to miss getting this recipe." As I went to my recipe box in the kitchen, the doorbell rang again. Catherine looked startled. "Are you expecting someone?" she asked, an edge to her voice. "No," I said, puzzled. "Perhaps it's a package." When I opened the door, a young woman in business attire stood on my porch, holding a leather portfolio. "Mrs. Winters? I'm Becky Hammond from Lakeside Estates Retirement Community. I believe we had an appointment to discuss our living options." I blinked in confusion. "I'm sorry, but I didn't make any appointment." The woman checked her tablet. "I have a consultation scheduled for 3:15 with Robin and Turner Winters, requested by Catherine Mercer?" I felt Catherine's presence behind me before I heard her voice. "Oh, there must have been a misunderstanding," she said smoothly, appearing at my shoulder. "I was researching options for my parents and must have mentioned the Winters while making inquiries. So sorry for the confusion." The woman looked uncertain. "The appointment was specifically booked for this address." "A clerical error, I'm sure," Catherine insisted, her hand now on my arm in a gesture that felt suddenly possessive rather than affectionate. "Perhaps we could reschedule for another time?" After an awkward exchange, the retirement community representative left, looking confused. I closed the door and turned to Catherine, whose composed smile remained firmly in place. "What was that about?" I asked directly. "Just a mix-up," she said, waving dismissively. "These places are so disorganized. Now, about that recipe?" But I wasn't ready to let it go. "Catherine, why would a retirement community have our names and address?" Her expression shifted, softening into something that resembled concern. "I've actually been meaning to talk to you and Turner about this, but I wanted to wait for the right moment. Alex is worried about you two aging in this big house with all these stairs. We've been researching options, just gathering information." "Without discussing it with us first?" I kept my voice level, but I felt a chill spreading through me. "It was going to be a surprise," she explained, her voice taking on a slightly wounded tone. "We wanted to have all the information ready to present to you. Alex is concerned about your future care." Something didn't add up. Alex had never expressed any such concerns to us. In fact, just the previous weekend, he'd helped Turner install a new railing in the backyard, talking enthusiastically about how the house would be perfect for family gatherings for years to come. "I see," I said, not seeing at all. "Well, next, Time. I'd appreciate being included in conversations about my own living arrangements. Catherine's phone chimed. She glanced at it and sighed dramatically. I really do need to run. Work emergency. Can I get that recipe? I handed her the recipe. Card, watching as she tucked it into her designer handbag, a bag that probably cost more than a month of our pension. As she headed toward the door, she paused to admire a small watercolor painting hanging in the hallway. This is lovely, she remarked. An original? Yes, I said. We bought it on our 25th anniversary trip to Maine. It has such investment potential, she said, studying it. Art can be such a smart asset. Asset. Not beautiful, not meaningful. An asset. The word choice struck me as oddly revealing. After Catherine left, I sat at the kitchen table, my untouched tea growing cold. The retirement community mix-up felt deliberate, calculated even. And coupled with Catherine's persistent interest in our finances, our property, even our artwork, a picture was beginning to form that I couldn't ignore. I picked up the phone and called the one person who might give me honest answers. Clark? It's Robin. I wonder if you might have time for coffee tomorrow. Clark had been Alex's best friend since middle school. Now a local attorney, he had remained close to our family even as other childhood friendships faded. If anyone would have insight into Alex's relationship, it would be him. The next morning, we met at a small cafe downtown. Clark arrived in a slightly rumpled suit, his kind face breaking into a familiar grin when he spotted me. Robin, you look fantastic as always, he said, giving me a warm hug before settling into the chair opposite mine. After brief catching up, I steered the conversation toward my concern. How well do you know Catherine? I asked. Clark's expression shifted subtly. I've met her a few times. She's impressive. But? I prompted, sensing his hesitation. He sighed, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. Look, I don't want to overstep. Alex is clearly crazy about her. Clark, please. If there's something I should know. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. It's probably nothing. Just, she asks a lot of questions about Alex's financial situation, his salary, his investment portfolio, whether he stands to inherit anything substantial. My stomach tightened. She asked you these things directly? At a dinner party last month. She played it casual, but the questions were pretty pointed. I didn't think much of it at the time, figured she was just planning their future. But then last week, she called my office. Your law office? I asked. Confused. Yeah. She wanted to know if I handled estate planning. Asked a bunch of hypothetical questions about how assets transfer after death, ways to expedite inheritance, bypass probate. When I mentioned I mainly practice corporate law, she seemed disappointed. The chill I'd felt yesterday returned, stronger now. Did she mention us specifically? Not by name, Clark said carefully. But she did ask about situations where a son is the only child, and the parents are sitting on significant assets that are underutilized. Her words, not mine. I must have paled, because Clark reached across the table to touch my hand. Robin, maybe I'm reading too much into it. Catherine is ambitious, sure, but that doesn't mean... She arranged for a retirement community representative to come to our house yesterday, I interrupted. Without telling us. Claimed it was a mistake, but... Clark's expression darkened. That's concerning. What should I do? If I tell Alex my suspicions, he'll think I'm interfering. You know how defensive he gets, especially after what happened with Julie. Tread carefully, Clark advised. Catherine is smart and calculating. You need evidence, not just suspicions before approaching Alex. Otherwise, it might just drive a wedge between you. That evening, I shared everything with Turner, the retirement community incident, my conversation with Clark, and all the small moments that had been nagging at me. I think she's after our money, I concluded. Not just eventually, through Alex, but actively trying to accelerate access to it. Turner, typically the more trusting of us, looked troubled. That's a serious accusation, Robin. Are you sure this isn't just new relationship anxiety? You were worried about Julie too, remember? This is different, I insisted. Julie was self-absorbed and inconsiderate, but she wasn't calculating. Catherine has been systematically assessing our assets since day one. Even if you're right, Turner said slowly. How do we proceed without alienating Alex? He's clearly fallen hard for her. That was the question that kept me awake that night, staring at the ceiling while Turner slept soundly beside me. How could I protect my son, and yes, our assets, without pushing him further into Catherine's carefully manicured arms? The answer came to me as dawn broke. I needed more than suspicions and second-hand reports. I needed irrefutable evidence, something Alex couldn't dismiss as his mother's overactive imagination. The opportunity presented itself sooner than I expected. The following Sunday, Catherine arrived for dinner without Alex, explaining he'd been called into work for an emergency. He felt terrible about missing dinner, she said, handing me a bottle of expensive wine. But he didn't want me to miss out on family time. The statement struck me as odd. Why would she come to a family dinner without the family member who connected us? But I welcomed her with a smile that felt increasingly strained. Throughout dinner, without Alex as a buffer, Catherine's questions about our finances became even more direct. Have you and Turner considered downsizing? She asked over dessert. This house must be so much work to maintain, and property values in this neighborhood have skyrocketed. You could sell for a significant profit, move into something more manageable. We're quite happy here, Turner replied, his tone pleasant but firm. The house suits us fine. Catherine smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Of course, but planning ahead is so important. Speaking of which, have you updated your will recently? So many people neglect that important detail. That question about our will lingered in the air like a dark cloud. Turner's fork paused halfway to his mouth, and I felt my shoulders tense. The directness of it, at a dinner table from someone who was essentially still a stranger to us, crossed a line from curious to invasive. Our legal affairs are in order, Turner said after a moment, his voice carrying an edge I rarely heard. Alex has always known we believe in being prepared. Catherine nodded, seemingly unaware of the discomfort she'd created. That's so responsible. I've been encouraging my parents to do the same. It's just practical planning, isn't it? Having everything spelled out clearly prevents family disputes later. The conversation moved on, but something had shifted in the atmosphere. Even Turner, who had initially defended Catherine, was watching her with new wariness. After dinner, as Catherine helped me clear the table, she gestured toward the china cabinet in our dining room. Those are beautiful pieces, she said, nodding at my grandmother's tea set. Family heirlooms? Yes, I replied. My grandmother brought them from England when she immigrated. They must be quite valuable, she mused, stepping closer to examine them through the glass. Antique china can be worth a surprising amount these days. Have you ever had them appraised? They're not for sale, I said more sharply than I intended. Their value is sentimental. Catherine laughed lightly. Of course, I wasn't suggesting otherwise. I just find it fascinating how ordinary objects from the past can become treasures. Over time. Like this house, a simple family home that's now a valuable asset. There was that word again. Asset. Everything in Catherine's world seemed to carry a price tag, a potential conversion to cash. Later, after she'd left, Turner and I sat in uneasy silence in the living room. You're right, he finally said. Something's not right with that girl. Who asks about wills at a Sunday dinner? Someone who's taking inventory, I replied, the certainty growing in me. She wasn't here tonight to spend time with us. She was here to assess what we have. But why? Alex makes good money. She has a successful career herself. Why this focus on our retirement savings and property? I shook my head. I don't know, but I intend to find out. My opportunity came the following week. Catherine called on Thursday, asking if she could stop by Saturday morning to borrow a cake pan she claimed I'd offered to lend her. Alex mentioned you have that special bundt pan with the intricate design. I'd love to try making that lemon cake you served last month. I didn't recall offering any such pan, but I agreed, suggesting 10 a.m. What I didn't tell her was that Turner would be at his monthly fishing club meeting, leaving me alone in the house with her. That Saturday, I deliberately left my phone on, the kitchen counter recording app activated, before answering the door. Catherine arrived precisely at 10, dressed in casual elegance, designer jeans, a cashmere sweater, and subtle gold jewelry that somehow made my own weekend attire feel shabby in comparison. "Thank you so much for letting me borrow this," she said as I handed her the bundt pan. "I'm hoping to surprise Alex with that delicious cake. He talks about your cooking constantly." "He's always appreciated home-cooked meals," I replied, offering her coffee. As we sat at the kitchen table, Catherine steered the conversation with practiced ease toward topics that seemed innocent on the surface, but carried undercurrents I was now alert to. "This neighborhood has become so desirable," she observed, glancing out the window at our modest street. "A colleague just sold her parents' home a few blocks from here for nearly triple what they paid in the 90s. They're using the proceeds to fund their retirement and help their daughter with a down payment on her first home. Such a win-win arrangement." The implication hung unspoken. We could do the same for Alex. I nodded noncommittally, letting her continue. "Turner mentioned last week that he's having some trouble with his knee," she said, her voice lowering with practiced concern. "Has he seen a specialist? Those issues can become seriously limiting as we age." "It's just a minor strain from gardening," I said. "Nothing serious." Catherine nodded solemnly. "That's good to hear. Still, it's a reminder of how quickly things can change at a certain age. One small health issue, and suddenly stairs become obstacles, yard work becomes impossible." "We're both in excellent health," I interjected, growing tired of her thinly veiled suggestions. "Of course," she backpedaled smoothly. "You both seem remarkably vital. I only mention it because my aunt ignored similar warning signs, insisted on staying in her big house alone, and ended up having a terrible fall. By the time my cousins convinced her to move to assisted living, she'd lost most of her mobility. Such a shame. If she'd transitioned earlier, she could have enjoyed the amenities and social aspects while she was still active." Each anecdote, I realized, was carefully crafted to plant seeds. Suggestions that we were too old for our home, that our health was precarious, that liquidating our assets was the sensible choice. And always, always, there was the subtle implication that Alex, and by extension Catherine, should be centrally involved in these decisions. When Catherine excused herself to use the bathroom, I remained at the kitchen table, my coffee cooling untouched. I knew what she was doing now, trying to position herself as a concerned, helpful presence while systematically undermining our confidence in our ability to manage independently. It was subtle manipulation, the kind that made you question your own judgment. When she returned, her phone chimed with a text message. She glanced at it and her expression changed. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Oh, just Alex," she said, a note of irritation slipping into her voice before she caught herself. "He's wondering when I'll be back. He can be so needy sometimes, always, wanting to know where I am, who I'm with." It was the first genuinely negative thing I'd heard her say about my son. The mask had slipped, just for a moment, but it was enough. "That doesn't sound like Alex," I said carefully. "He's always been quite independent." Catherine's smile returned instantly. "Oh, he is. I didn't mean it that way. It's sweet that he checks in, shows how much he cares." But I'd seen it, that flash of annoyance, the momentary glimpse behind the perfect facade. and it confirmed what I'd suspected all along. Her interest in Alex was secondary to her interest in what came with him: his family, his inheritance, his access to our assets. When Catherine left with the bunt pan, I immediately retrieved my phone and played back the recording. Hearing our conversation again, divorced from Catherine's carefully modulated expressions and practiced body language, the manipulation was even more obvious. The subtle digs about aging, the pointed questions about our property value, the anecdotes that always circled back to liquidating assets or transitioning to assisted living, all of it designed to make us feel vulnerable and dependent. But most revealing was what came after her phone chimed. Something I hadn't heard while she was present. "Just give me time," she'd muttered to herself in the hallway, apparently typing a response. "I'm working on the old lady now. Her husband's the tougher sell, but she's starting to wobble. Once they're in that retirement place, the house is as good as ours." My blood ran cold. The retirement place she'd tried to arrange without our knowledge, the house she already considered as good as ours. There it was, confirmation of everything I'd feared, in her own words. I immediately called Turner, my hands shaking slightly as I held the phone. "You need to come home," I said when he answered. "I have something you need to hear." That evening, Turner and I sat at our kitchen table, heads close together, listening to the recording for the third time. Each replay cemented our understanding of what we were dealing with. Catherine wasn't just a gold digger interested in Alex's future inheritance. She was actively working to accelerate her access to our assets, treating our retirement as an inconvenient waiting period before she could claim what she considered rightfully hers. "I can't believe it," Turner said, his voice hollow with disappointment. "The way she talked about us when she thought no one could hear." "The question is what we do now," I said, stopping the recording. "Alex is completely taken with her. If we show him this without preparing him, he might dismiss it as taken out of context, or worse, accuse us of setting her up." Turner nodded grimly. "He's always been defensive when it comes to his relationships. Remember how he shut us out for weeks after we expressed concerns about Julie?" "This is different," I insisted. "Julie was self-centered and immature. Catherine is calculating and manipulative. She's not just dating our son. She's targeting our retirement savings, our home, our entire financial security." We debated our options late into the night. Confront Catherine directly? She would deny everything, twist our words, perhaps even use the confrontation to drive a deeper wedge between us and Alex. Go straight to Alex with the recording? He might refuse to believe it, especially if Catherine had been poisoning the well, suggesting we disapproved of their relationship. "We need more evidence," Turner finally concluded. "Something so irrefutable that even Alex can't dismiss it. And we need to understand exactly what she's planning." Over the next few weeks, we became reluctant detectives in our own family drama. Turner began carefully monitoring our financial statements, checking for any unauthorized access or inquiries. I started keeping detailed notes of every interaction with Catherine, documenting her questions, her suggestions, the way she steered conversations toward our assets or estate planning. Meanwhile, Catherine's presence in our lives intensified. She began dropping by unannounced, always with some thin pretext, returning a borrowed dish, delivering fresh flowers, just because, asking for advice about a gift for Alex. Each visit included pointed questions or comments about our home, our health, our finances. "This beautiful yard must be so much work for Turner," she'd observe with practiced concern. "Has he thought about hiring a service? I know a wonderful landscaping company that specializes in helping seniors maintain their properties." Or, "These old houses have such charm, but the maintenance costs must be astronomical. My colleagues' parents spent their entire retirement fund fixing structural issues in their historic home. They wish they'd downsized years earlier." Each comment was designed to plant seeds of doubt about our ability to maintain our lifestyle, to subtly suggest that surrendering our independence was the rational choice. And always, she positioned herself as the helpful, concerned advisor in these scenarios. Meanwhile, Alex seemed increasingly under her influence. He began echoing her concerns, asking questions he'd never raised before. "Mom, are you sure you and Dad are managing okay with this big house?" he asked during a rare visit without Catherine. "I worry about those steep basement stairs, especially with Dad's knee acting up." "Your father's knee is fine," I said, perhaps more sharply than intended. It was a minor strain that healed weeks ago. "Why are you suddenly so concerned about our basement stairs?" Alex looked taken aback by my tone. Catherine mentioned that her aunt had a bad fall on similar stairs. It got me thinking about prevention, that's all." "Catherine seems to have a lot of opinions about our living situation," I observed carefully. "She cares about you guys," Alex defended immediately. "She's just looking out for your welfare." I bit back what I really wanted to say, that Catherine cared about our house, our assets, our potential inheritance, not our welfare. Instead, I nodded noncommittally, recognizing that direct confrontation would only push him further into her arms. The situation escalated when Alex announced they were engaged. He called on a Tuesday evening, his voice brimming with nervous excitement. "I asked her last night, Mom. I know it seems fast, but when you know, right? We're thinking a spring wedding, nothing too elaborate." My heart sank, but I forced enthusiasm into my voice. "That's wonderful news, honey. We should celebrate. Why don't you both come for dinner this weekend?" After hanging up, I turned to Turner, who had heard enough of the conversation to understand. "We're running out of time," I said quietly. The engagement dinner that weekend was an exercise in restraint. Catherine arrived wearing a sizable diamond, ring that must have cost Alex several months' salary. She was effusive, embracing me warmly, calling me Mom for the first time, a presumption that made my skin crawl. "We're going to be such a close family," she gushed, clinging to Alex's arm. "I've always wanted in-laws I could really connect with." Throughout dinner, Catherine dominated the conversation with wedding plans and, more tellingly, post-wedding plans. She spoke of houses they were considering, all in exclusive neighborhoods far beyond what Alex could reasonably afford on his salary, and casually mentioned how they'd need to set up a home office for her consulting work. "I'm transitioning to independent consulting," she explained, though she'd never mentioned this career change before. "It will give me more flexibility, especially when we start a family. And of course, I'll be available to help you both whenever you need it." The implication was clear. She was positioning herself to be more present in our lives, more involved in our decisions, more integrated into our financial affairs. After dinner, while Alex helped Turner bring up a bottle of champagne from the basement, Catherine cornered me in the kitchen under the guise of helping with dessert. "I've been meaning to ask," she said, her voice lowered confidentially. "Has Alex always been so cautious with money? I'm trying to help him see the importance of investing in our future, but he's surprisingly resistant to some of my suggestions." "What kind of suggestions?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral as I sliced the apple pie. "Well, for instance, I found the perfect starter home in Oak Ridge Estates. It would require a slightly larger down payment than he initially budgeted for. But it's such a sound investment. Property in that area appreciates so quickly." "Alex has always been financially responsible," I said. "It's a quality I admire in him." Catherine's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Responsible, yes, but sometimes too cautious. I've suggested he could ask for family help with the down payment, an early inheritance advance, if you will. Many parents do that these days. It's more tax efficient than waiting." There it was, the first direct suggestion that we should start transferring assets to them immediately. I placed the pie server down carefully, buying myself a moment to control my response. "That's not something Turner and I have ever considered," I said finally. "We believe in letting our children make their own way." just as we did. Catherine's expression cooled, though her smile remained fixed in place. Of course, I completely understand. It's just that with housing prices as they are, young couples need all the help they can get to secure their future, especially when there's family wealth available. Available? I repeated, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Our retirement savings aren't available, Catherine. They're allocated for our future needs, which could extend decades. She backpedaled, smoothly. I didn't mean immediately available, just eventually. And planning for that eventuality is just good financial management, isn't it? Before I could respond, Alex and Turner returned with the champagne, and Catherine instantly transformed back into the beaming, affectionate fiancée. But the mask had slipped again, revealing the calculation beneath. That night, after they'd left, I recounted the kitchen conversation to Turner. She's getting bolder, I concluded. An early inheritance advance? She's not even trying to hide her intentions anymore. Turner nodded grimly. We need to act soon, before this engagement progresses any further. But we need to be smart about it. If we move too directly, we risk losing Alex entirely. Our opportunity came from an unexpected source. The following Wednesday, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. The woman on the other end introduced herself as Polly Donovan, Catherine's former roommate. I hope you don't mind me calling, she began hesitantly. Alex gave me your number. I told him I wanted to coordinate a surprise bridal shower for Catherine. But that's not why I'm calling. A sense of foreboding settled over me. What is this about, Polly? I'm not sure how to say this delicately, so I'll just be direct. I think you and your family need to be very careful with Catherine. She's not who she presents herself to be. For the next 20 minutes, Polly painted a picture that confirmed our worst fears and added disturbing new details. Catherine, it seemed, had a pattern. This wasn't her first attempt at securing wealth through marriage. There had been 2 previous engagements, both to men with substantial family assets, that had mysteriously dissolved once she'd extracted significant loans or investments in her various business ventures. She targets men with family money, Polly explained. Not necessarily wealthy themselves, but with parents who have accumulated assets. She's calculating, patient. She creates investment opportunities, business ventures that need funding. Then, once she has what she wants, she finds reasons to end the relationship. Why are you telling me this? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Because I made the mistake of staying silent before. Her last fiancé's parents lost over $200,000 in a startup investment Catherine orchestrated. They're still trying to recover the money through legal channels, but she covered her tracks carefully. I can't have that on my conscience again. After the call ended, I sat in stunned silence. Polly had offered to send documentation, emails, text messages, even a business plan Catherine had drafted for her previous fiancé's parents. It outlined an investment opportunity that mysteriously collapsed shortly after she received their funds. When Turner returned from his volunteer shift at the community garden, I shared everything. His face darkened as he absorbed the implications. This isn't just about trying to access our retirement or pushing us into assisted living, he said. She's running a sophisticated con, and our son is her latest mark. We need to tell Alex, I insisted. Show him the recording, tell him about Polly's call. Turner shook his head. Not yet. He's too emotionally invested. We need something he can't dismiss as misunderstanding or jealousy from an ex-roommate. We decided to do more research before confronting Alex. Over the next week, with Polly's help, we pieced together more of Catherine's history. She had indeed worked as a marketing director, but for a small local firm, not the International Cosmetics company she'd claimed. Her tales of living abroad were fabrications. Most disturbing was the pattern Polly described, how Catherine would gradually isolate her partners from friends and family who asked too many questions, how she would subtly undermine their self-confidence while appearing supportive. She's Exceptionally good at making her targets feel like she's the only one truly on their side, Polly explained during a follow-up call. By the time anyone realizes what's happening, she's already established herself as the most trusted person in their life. I thought about how Catherine had been subtly positioning herself between Alex and us, the concerned comments about our aging, the suggestions that we didn't fully support their relationship, the way she increasingly spoke for Alex during family gatherings. The pattern was there, hidden in plain sight. Our investigation took an unexpected turn when Turner ran into Aaron Mitchell, a loan officer at our local bank and a longtime family friend. During their conversation, Aaron mentioned in passing that he'd recently handled a loan application for Alex. "Quite a substantial amount," Aaron remarked. "For some kind of business investment," he said. I was surprised given his usual conservative approach to finances. Turner, trying to mask his alarm, asked casual questions about the timing and nature of the loan. Aaron, though bound by confidentiality rules, did confirm it had been submitted within the last 2 weeks and involved a significant percentage of Alex's available credit. That evening, we tried calling Alex, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Increasingly concerned, Turner suggested we drive by his apartment under the pretense of dropping off some homemade food, a transparent excuse, but one that might get us face to face with our son. When we arrived at Alex's building, we were surprised to see moving boxes stacked near the entrance. A neighbor we recognized was coming out as we approached. "Oh, are you here to help with the packing?" she asked. Alex mentioned his parents might be stopping by. "Packing?" Turner asked, unable to hide his confusion. "For the move," she said, looking suddenly uncertain. "He and Catherine found a place in Oak Ridge Estates. They're moving next weekend." "I assumed you knew." My heart sank. Oak Ridge Estates, the exclusive neighborhood Catherine had mentioned, with homes far beyond Alex's price range. The same development she'd suggested we should help fund as an early inheritance advance. We found Alex in his apartment, surrounded by half-packed boxes. His surprise at seeing us quickly gave way to defensiveness when we asked about the move. "It's a great investment opportunity," he insisted, not quite meeting our eyes. "Catherine found it. The owners are motivated sellers, so we got it below market value." "And how are you financing this investment?" Turner asked carefully. Alex's expression closed off. "We figured it out. Catherine has some business ventures that are about to pay off. Plus, I took out a loan to cover the down payment." "A business loan?" I asked, remembering Aaron's comment. "A personal loan," he admitted. "Just to bridge the gap until Catherine's consulting business gets established." The parallels to Polly's warnings were too striking to ignore. Once again, Catherine had orchestrated an investment opportunity that required immediate action and significant financing from her partner. "Alex," I began carefully, "we're concerned that this is moving very quickly. Buying a house, taking out loans, these are major decisions that affect your financial future." His expression hardened. "I'm 35, Mom. I think I can make my own financial decisions without parental approval." "Of course you can," Turner interjected, placing a calming hand on my arm. "We just want to make sure you're not being pressured into commitments you're not ready for." "Catherine isn't pressuring me," Alex snapped. "She's helping me see opportunities I was too cautious to pursue on my own. That's what partners do. They push each other to grow." The conversation deteriorated from there. Alex became increasingly defensive, interpreting our concerns as criticism of Catherine and, by extension, his judgment. When we left, the tension between us was palpable, and I felt the distance growing, exactly as Polly had warned would happen. In the car, Turner turned to me with resolve in his eyes. "We need to take more direct action. This isn't just about protecting our assets anymore. It's about protecting Alex from making catastrophic financial mistakes that could affect him for decades." "What do you suggest?" I asked, feeling helpless in the face of our son's determination. "We need irrefutable evidence," Turner said. Something so clear, so unmistakable, that even Alex in his infatuated state can't deny it. That night, we formulated a plan. It was risky, potentially damaging to our relationship with Alex if it backfired. But the alternative, watching silently as Catherine systematically isolated him while draining his finances and positioning herself to access our retirement savings, was unthinkable. We would set a trap. And if our suspicions were correct, Catherine would walk right into it. The plan we devised was simple, but required perfect timing. We would create a situation that would allow Catherine to reveal her true intentions, not just to us, but ideally with Alex present to witness it himself. The trap would need to be baited with something irresistible to Catherine, the promise of immediate access to significant assets. Turner suggested we invite Catherine and Alex to dinner to discuss some important financial decisions we'd been considering. The vague phrasing was deliberate, designed to pique Catherine's interest without revealing our true intentions. Alex sounded surprised when I called with the invitation. Financial decisions? What kind of decisions? Nothing to worry about, I assured him. Just some restructuring we've been discussing with our financial advisor. We'd like your input, and of course, since Catherine will be part of the family soon, she should be included in these conversations. There was a pause then. I'll check with Catherine. Her schedule's pretty packed with the business launch and wedding planning. Try to make it work, I said, injecting a note of significance into my voice. It's important to us, and I think you'll both want to be part of this discussion. As I'd anticipated, they agreed to dinner the following Saturday. Meanwhile, Turner and I prepared our strategy. We contacted our actual financial advisor, Paulo Martinez, explaining enough of the situation that he understood our concerns without revealing our full suspicions. Paulo, who had managed our modest retirement accounts for over a decade, agreed to be on call during the dinner in case we needed him to verify any information. The day before the dinner, I called Alex when I knew he'd be at work, deliberately, catching him when Catherine wouldn't be present. I just wanted to confirm dinner tomorrow, I said casually. And also to ask, has Catherine mentioned anything about us moving to a retirement community? What? No, why would she? Alex sounded genuinely confused. No reason, I said quickly. I just thought I heard her mention something about Lakeside Estates last time she was here. Maybe I misunderstood. I hung up feeling slightly guilty for the manipulation, but also relieved that Alex seemed unaware of Catherine's machinations regarding our living situation. The seeds of doubt had been planted, a small inconsistency for him to consider. Saturday arrived, and I spent the day preparing an elaborate dinner. Catherine's favorite salmon en croûte, roasted vegetables, and a chocolate torte for dessert. The table was set with our best china and crystal, creating an atmosphere of importance for the evening's financial discussion. Turner and I had agreed on our roles. He would introduce the topic of our finances, while I would watch Catherine closely, recording the conversation discreetly on my phone hidden in my pocket. They arrived at 7. Catherine stunning in a navy dress that looked new and expensive, Alex somewhat tense but smiling. After initial pleasantries and cocktails, we moved to the dining room. I noticed Catherine scanning the room appreciatively, her gaze lingering on the antique grandfather clock and the oil painting Turner's parents had left us. Everything looks lovely, she said, accepting a glass of wine. What's the special occasion? Just family business, Turner replied with a calculated casualness. But important family business. Dinner progressed with light conversation until the main course was finished. Then, as planned, Turner cleared his throat and adopted a serious expression. Alex, Catherine, we wanted to discuss some financial decisions we've been considering, he began. As we get older, we've been thinking about simplifying our affairs and planning for the future. Catherine immediately leaned forward, her interest unmistakable. That's so wise, she said warmly. Many people avoid these conversations until it's too late. Turner nodded, appearing to appreciate her support. We've been looking at our assets, the house, our retirement accounts, some investments, and considering the most efficient way to transfer them eventually. Estate planning is crucial, Catherine agreed, her voice taking on the knowledgeable tone she used when discussing financial matters. There are so many tax implications to consider. Exactly, Turner said. Our financial advisor suggested we might want to start transferring some assets sooner rather than later. A gradual approach rather than waiting. I watched as Catherine's eyes widened slightly, her posture shifting subtly. Forward, a predator sensing prey. That's actually becoming quite common, she said. It can be more tax efficient, and it allows you to see your family benefit from your hard work during your lifetime. Alex looked confused, glancing between his father and his fiancée. I'm not sure I understand what you're suggesting, Dad. Before Turner could respond, Catherine placed her hand on Alex's arm. I think your parents are considering making some early distributions from their estate, honey. It's a very sensible approach, especially given current tax laws. She turned to us, her expression earnest. You know, my colleague's parents recently did something similar. They transferred their lake house to their children while setting up a life estate for themselves. They still get to use it, but the ownership transfer happened when the market was advantageous. That's interesting, Turner said. We've been considering something similar with this house. The hook was set. Catherine's eyes practically sparkled, with barely concealed excitement. Real estate transfers can be so complicated, she said, her voice dropping into a confidential tone. But I actually know an excellent attorney who specializes in these transactions. He helped my parents with some property transfers recently. I raised an eyebrow. Your parents transferred property to you? This contradicted her previous stories about her parents' modest financial circumstances. Catherine barely hesitated. A small vacation property, nothing extravagant, but it taught me a lot about the process. She turned back to Turner. So you're considering transferring the house to Alex? Turner nodded slowly. We've discussed putting it in his name while retaining the right to live here, and potentially liquidating some of our retirement accounts to help with your new home purchase. This was the bait, the suggestion that we were considering immediately transferring significant assets to Alex, which would, by extension, give Catherine access to them through marriage. She took it completely. That's extremely generous, she said, her voice warm, but her eyes calculating. And honestly, very practical. The financial advisor I've been consulting for our wedding planning says that intergenerational transfers are most efficient when done during life, rather than after death. Wedding planning requires financial advisors? I asked innocently. For the investment aspects, Catherine said smoothly. We're considering various options for merging our finances, investment strategies for our future together. She turned back to Turner. How soon were you thinking of initiating these transfers? Potentially quite soon, Turner said. Our advisor suggested we might want to start the process before interest rates change again. Perhaps even before your wedding. I watched Alex's expression shift from confusion to concern. Dad, are you sure about this? Your retirement? Catherine interrupted him with a gentle squeeze of his arm. Alex, your parents have clearly thought this through. It's their decision how they want to manage their assets. She smiled at us. And it's incredibly generous. I know Alex has been concerned about your future care needs, but this would actually allow us to be more directly involved in ensuring you're both taken care of properly. What care needs? Alex asked, looking genuinely perplexed. Mom and Dad are in perfect health. Catherine gave a small, condescending laugh. Honey, everyone needs care eventually. Your father's knee problems, your mother's concerns about managing the house. These things only become more challenging with age. What concerns about managing the house? I asked, feigning confusion. I don't recall mentioning any problems. Catherine's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Perhaps I misunderstood. I just got the impression during our conversations that the maintenance was becoming burdensome. She quickly pivoted back to the main topic. Regarding the asset transfers, would you be working with your current financial advisor? Because I could recommend someone who specializes in this exact type of situation. It was happening exactly as we'd anticipated. Catherine was not only eager to accept our assets, but actively maneuvering to insert her own advisors into the process, people who would potentially prioritize her interests over ours. We trust Paolo, Turner said firmly. He's managed our finances for years. Of course, Catherine nodded. But these specialized transactions sometimes require specific expertise. My contact has helped several families with similar arrangements, ensuring everything is structured to maximize benefits for both generations. Alex was watching Catherine with growing unease, clearly noticing how she had moved from surprised recipient to active orchestrator in a matter of minutes. Catherine, he said slowly, why are you so informed about all this? We've never discussed my parents transferring assets to us. Catherine's composure faltered for just a moment before she recovered with practiced ease. I'm just trying to be helpful, Alex. Financial planning happens to be an interest of mine. I've done a lot of research on intergenerational wealth transfer since we got engaged. She turned to us with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I want to make sure we're all making informed decisions. Alex frowned slightly, looking between Catherine and us. But we've never talked about my parents transferring anything to us. We've been focused on our own financial planning, which naturally includes considering future inheritances, Catherine replied smoothly. It's just responsible planning, honey. The tension in the room was becoming palpable. I decided it was time to push a little harder. Actually, I said, reaching for the bottle to refill wine glasses, we've been thinking about more than just the house. We have those certificates of deposit that are maturing next month, the ones worth about $175,000. Our advisor suggested we might consider putting those in Alex's name as well. Catherine's eyes widened slightly at the specific figure. That's a substantial amount. Are you comfortable liquidating those investments now? They could be quite useful for Alex and me as we establish our new home. For us? Alex asked, his brow furrowing deeper. Catherine, my parents' retirement savings aren't for furnishing our house. Of course not for furnishing, Catherine said with a light laugh that sounded forced. For investing. Property improvements increase value, or perhaps we could use it to accelerate the launch of my consulting business, which would benefit all of us in the long run. How exactly would your consulting business benefit my parents? Alex asked, his voice taking on an edge I hadn't heard before. Catherine placed her hand on his arm again, but this time he subtly shifted away from her touch. Alex, when family resources are consolidated and strategically invested, everyone benefits. It's basic financial planning. That doesn't answer my question, he persisted. Turner cleared his throat. Actually, we were hoping to discuss exactly how these transfers would work. For instance, if we put the house in Alex's name, what assurances would we have that we could continue living here as long as we need to? Catherine's response was immediate and revealing. Well, naturally, you would continue living here for now. Though eventually, it might make more sense to transition to a setting more appropriate for your changing needs. Lakeside Estates, for example, has excellent amenities for active seniors. Alex's head snapped toward her. Lakeside Estates? The retirement community? Why would you mention that specifically? A flicker of realization crossed Catherine's face. She'd made a tactical error. It's just an example, she said quickly. I've heard good things about their programs. From whom? Alex pressed. And why are you bringing up retirement communities at all? My parents are in their 60s, active and perfectly capable of living independently. Of course they are currently, Catherine said, her tone growing defensive. I'm simply thinking ahead. Planning for contingencies is what responsible people do, Alex. My mom mentioned you'd brought up Lakeside Estates before, Alex said slowly. She thought she'd misheard you. Catherine shot me a look that contained equal parts surprise and accusation. I returned it with an expression of innocent confusion. I may have mentioned it in passing, she admitted. They have an excellent reputation. Alex placed his napkin on the table with deliberate care. You know what's strange? When Mom called yesterday, she asked if you'd mentioned anything about them moving to a retirement community. I said no, because you never discussed anything like that with me. But apparently you've been discussing it with my parents? Catherine's mask slipped further. Not discussing exactly, just exploring options for the future. Without including me in these conversations, Alex's voice had hardened. I didn't want to worry you unnecessarily, Catherine said, reaching for his hand. I know how protective you are of your parents. Alex pulled his hand away. That doesn't explain why you've apparently been having private conversations about my parents' living arrangements, or why you seem so knowledgeable about their finances. He turned to us. How often has Catherine been coming here without me? The moment had arrived, the confrontation we'd been both hoping for and dreading. Catherine must have sensed the shifting dynamics because she quickly attempted to regain control of the narrative. Alex, you're overreacting, she said firmly. Your parents invited me over several times to help with recipes, gardening tips, normal family interactions. Financial matters came up naturally in conversation. There's nothing suspicious about that. I took a deep breath. Catherine has been very interested in our financial situation from the very beginning, I said carefully. During her first visit, she asked detailed questions about our retirement income, the status of our mortgage, the value of our home. Standard getting-to-know-you conversation, Catherine insisted, but her voice had taken on a defensive edge. She's visited at least 7 times without you present, Turner added, always with some small pretext, borrowing kitchen items, returning dishes, dropping off small gifts. And during each visit, I continued, the conversation inevitably turned to our assets, our health concerns, which we don't actually have, and suggestions about downsizing or moving to assisted living. Catherine's face flushed. This is being completely misrepresented. I've simply shown an interest in your parents' well-being, Alex. More interest, frankly, than you've demonstrated lately. That was a tactical error. Alex's expression darkened at the accusation. Don't try to turn this around on me, he said quietly. You've been coming to my parents' house behind my back, discussing their finances and suggesting they move to a retirement community, all without ever mentioning it to me. Not behind your back, Catherine insisted. You're just so busy with work, and I was trying to help lighten your load by handling some of these family matters. Family matters? Alex repeated. You're not even family yet, and you're making plans for my parents' retirement that I know nothing about? The tension was escalating quickly. I decided it was time to lay out more of what we knew. Alex, I said gently, there's something else you should know. A woman named Polly Donovan contacted us last week. The color drained from Catherine's face. Polly? Why would she call you? She was concerned, Turner explained. She told us about your previous engagements, about the business ventures and investments that mysteriously failed after you received funding from your fiancé's families. That's absurd, Catherine sputtered, but her confidence was visibly cracking. Polly is a disturbed individual who's always been jealous of my success. Whatever she told you is a complete fabrication. Is it? I asked quietly. Because we've done some research, Catherine. Your position at the international cosmetics company was actually at a small local marketing firm. You never lived abroad as you claimed, and according to public records, you've been engaged twice before, both times to men from affluent families. Alex was staring at Catherine now, his expression a mixture of confusion and dawning realization. Is this true? He asked. Of course not, she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. Your parents have clearly misunderstood some details about my background, and they seem determined to misinterpret my genuine concern for their well-being as something sinister. Then explain. Lakeside Estates, Alex demanded. Explain why a retirement community representative showed up at this house, claiming to have an appointment arranged by you. Catherine's eyes widened in genuine surprise. How did you— So it's true, Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. You did arrange that. I was gathering information, Catherine said defensively. Exploring options. There's nothing wrong with that. Without discussing it with me? Without discussing it with my parents? Alex stood up abruptly. What else haven't you told me, Catherine? The dining room fell into tense silence. Catherine's eyes darted between us, calculating her next move while Alex stood rigid beside his chair, waiting for her response. Alex, please sit down, she finally said, her voice regaining some of its practiced sweetness. This is all being blown completely out of proportion. Your parents have misunderstood my intentions. Then explain your intentions, Alex insisted, remaining standing. Explain why you've been discussing retirement communities for my perfectly healthy parents. Catherine sighed dramatically, as if dealing with unreasonable children. Fine. Yes, I gathered some information about senior living options. That's called being proactive. I noticed your father wincing when he climbed the stairs last month. I saw your mother struggling with those heavy gardening tools. I was concerned. Mom? Alex turned to me, uncertainty flickering across his face. I've never struggled with my gardening tools, I said quietly. And your father's knee healed weeks, ago from a minor strain. See? Catherine interjected. They're in denial about their limitations. This is exactly why family members often need to intervene before a crisis occurs. Alex slowly sat back down, his eyes never leaving Catherine's face. You still haven't explained why you never mentioned any of this to me. I was going to, she insisted. Once I had all the information, I didn't want to worry you unnecessarily. And the financial discussions? The asset transfers Mom and Dad mentioned? Alex pressed. Catherine's expression softened into something resembling sincerity. I was simply responding to their questions. If they've been considering transferring assets to you, that's their decision. I was merely offering perspective-based on my research. She was good, almost convincing in her reasonable tone and carefully constructed explanations. For a moment, I could see doubt cross Alex's face. Perhaps we had overreacted. Perhaps Catherine really did have good intentions that we'd misinterpreted. But I knew better. I reached into my pocket and withdrew my phone. Catherine, I said calmly. The day you came to borrow my bunt pan, I recorded our conversation. Her practiced composure faltered visibly. You— what? I had concerns about your intentions, so I decided to document our interactions, I explained, keeping my voice steady. Would you like to hear what you said when you thought no one was listening? Without waiting for a response, I pressed play. Catherine's voice filled the dining room, crystal clear. Just give me time. I'm working on the old lady now. Her husband's the tougher sell, but she's starting to wobble. Once they're in that retirement place, the house is as good as ours. Alex's face drained of color. Catherine's mouth opened and closed soundlessly for a moment before she found her voice. That's completely taken out of context, she stammered. I was talking about something entirely different. What possible context would make that statement innocent? Turner asked quietly. And there's more, I continued, my finger hovering over the play button again. Should we listen to the part where you discuss how to access our retirement accounts? Or perhaps the section where you outline your timeline for selling our house once it's in Alex's name? Alex, they're manipulating you, Catherine said desperately, reaching for his hand. Think about it. They've been recording private conversations, contacting people from my past, all behind your back. Who's really being deceptive here? It was a clever deflection, attempting to turn Alex's suspicion toward us instead. I held my breath, waiting for his response. Alex pulled his hand away from hers slowly. Why would my mother need to record your conversations unless she felt threatened in some way? Why would they need to contact your former roommate unless they had serious concerns? His voice was quiet, but steady. They're trying to protect me, Catherine. The question is, what are you trying to do? Protect you too, she insisted, her eyes now glistening with unshed tears. Your parents are getting older. They have substantial assets that aren't being properly managed. I was simply trying to help secure your future, our future together. By pushing them into a retirement home against their will? Alex's voice had turned cold. By planning to sell their house out from under them? You're twisting everything, Catherine said, a note of desperation entering her voice. Ask yourself why your parents suddenly want to transfer all these assets to you. They've never mentioned anything like this before, have they? They're manipulating the situation, trying to drive a wedge between us. I exchanged a glance with Turner. It was time for the final revelation. There are no assets being transferred, Catherine, Turner said quietly. No certificates of deposit maturing next month. No plans to put the house in Alex's name. We made it all up to see how you would react. Catherine's expression froze. What? It was a test, I explained. And your response told us everything we needed to know. You didn't express surprise at our sudden generosity. You didn't suggest we reconsider for our own financial security. Instead, you immediately began positioning yourself to control those assets, even bringing up your own financial advisors and attorneys to facilitate the transfers. That's not fair, Catherine protested, but her voice had lost its conviction. It's perfectly fair, Alex said, studying her with new eyes. If you truly cared about my parents' well-being, your first response would have been concern about their retirement security, not excitement about getting your hands on their money. The carefully constructed facade Catherine had maintained was crumbling rapidly. Her expression hardened, the mask of sweetness and concern falling away completely. You have no idea what you're talking about, she snapped, suddenly abandoning all pretense. Do you know how pathetic it looks? The three of you sitting in this outdated house, clinging to your modest little lives? I was offering you a way to put your stagnant assets to actual use. The transformation was startling. Gone was the warm, considerate woman who had charmed us at first meeting. In her place sat someone cold, contemptuous, and calculating. Your retirement is a waste of resources, she continued, her voice sharp with disdain. Just sitting here in this house that's far too big for you, with money you'll never spend while Alex lives in that cramped apartment? I was going to make sure everything was put to better use. Alex stared at her in shock. This isn't you. This can't be you. Oh, grow up, Alex, Catherine said with a dismissive wave. This is exactly who I am. Someone who sees opportunities and takes them. Someone who doesn't settle for mediocrity. She glanced around our dining room with unconcealed contempt. Someone who aims higher than this. Higher? I repeated, finding my voice despite my shock at her transformation. You mean stealing. From people who trusted you? Manipulating your way into families and taking what isn't yours? That's not aiming higher, Catherine. That's sinking very, very low. Catherine stood abruptly, gathering her purse. I don't have to sit here and be insulted by people who don't understand ambition. She turned to Alex, her expression cold. Are you coming? Alex looked up at her, his face reflecting both heartbreak and clarity. No, Catherine, I'm not. Fine, she said, her voice clipped. Enjoy your cozy little family dinner. But remember, Alex, I was your best chance at a real future, not this suburban mediocrity. She gestured around dismissively. My parents' suburban mediocrity, as you call it, was built on honesty, hard work, and genuine love, Alex said quietly. That's more success than you'll ever know. With a final scornful glance, Catherine turned and strode out of the dining room. Moments later, we heard the front door slam shut with such force that the windows rattled. The three of us sat in stunned silence. Alex's face was pale, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for his water glass. "I'm so sorry," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I had no idea. I never suspected." I reached across the table and took his hand. "We didn't want to believe it either, honey. We wanted to be wrong." "All those plans we made," Alex said, more to himself than to us. "The house in Oak Ridge Estates. Her consulting business? She had me take out a loan, for the down payment. She said it was just temporary until her investment matured." Turner's expression darkened. "How much?" $40,000, Alex admitted, looking ashamed. "Almost everything I had saved, plus the loan." I squeezed his hand reassuringly. "Money can be replaced. Trust me, you got off lightly compared to what she had planned." "How did I not see it?" Alex asked, genuine anguish in his voice. "How was I so completely fooled?" "Because she was very, very good at what she does," Turner said. "And because you're fundamentally honest yourself, so you don't automatically look for deception in others." Alex looked up at us, his eyes reflecting both gratitude and lingering shock. "If you hadn't intervened, if you hadn't investigated—" "But we did," I said firmly. "That's what family does. We look out for each other." As the reality of what had just happened settled over the dining room, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief that the truth had finally emerged, sadness for Alex's pain, and quiet. Gratitude that our family bonds had proven stronger than Catherine's manipulations. The worst was over, but I knew the road to recovery, both emotional and financial, was just beginning. After Catherine's dramatic exit, we sat in silence for several minutes, the elegant dinner I'd prepared now cold and forgotten on our plates. Alex stared blankly at the empty doorway, as if still processing the transformation he'd witnessed in the woman he thought he knew. "I should go after her," he finally said, his voice hollow. "We need to talk. Maybe there's an explanation." Turner placed a firm hand on Alex's shoulder. "Son, there's nothing left to explain. You heard her true thoughts about us, about you, in her own words." "But the loan," Alex said, suddenly looking panicked. "The house we put a deposit on. There are contracts, commitments." "We'll figure it out," I assured him, though internally, I was calculating the financial damage Catherine might have already caused. "Right now, let's focus on making sure she can't do any more harm." We moved to the living room, the formality of the dining table suddenly feeling oppressive. Alex sat heavily on the couch, running his hands through his hair. "I need to see those bank statements," Turner said gently. "We need to understand exactly what financial entanglements exist between you two." Alex nodded numbly and pulled out his phone, logging into his banking app. What we discovered sent a chill through me. Beyond the $40,000 personal loan, Catherine had been added as an authorized user on 2 of his credit cards. There were pending applications for joint accounts, and a mortgage pre-approval listing both their names, with income figures for Catherine that seemed suspiciously inflated. "We need to freeze everything," I said immediately. "Call the bank. Cancel those cards, withdraw the mortgage application, and change all your passwords," Turner added. "Email, banking, investment accounts, everything." Alex looked overwhelmed. "I gave her access to so much. We were getting married. I trusted her completely." The raw pain in his voice broke my heart. I sat beside him on the couch, putting my arm around his shoulders the way I used to when he was a child waking from a nightmare. "This isn't your fault," I said firmly. "Catherine is a practiced manipulator. She knew exactly what she was doing." "Your mother's right," Turner agreed. "From what Polly told us, Catherine has refined her approach through multiple engagements. She targets kind, trusting people precisely because they don't look for deception. Alex's phone rang, Catherine's name flashing on the screen. He stared at it, clearly torn. "Don't answer," Turner advised. "Not now, when you're still processing everything. She'll try to explain it away, make you doubt what you heard with your own ears." "But your father's right," I said. "Catherine is skilled at turning situations to her advantage. Give yourself time to think clearly before engaging with her again." The phone stopped ringing, only to immediately light up with a text message. "Alex, your parents have completely twisted everything. Call me. We need to talk before this misunderstanding destroys our future." "Misunderstanding?" Alex repeated bitterly. "She called you an old lady she was working on. She talked about our house being as good as hers. She admitted trying to push you into a retirement home so she could access your assets. What part of that is a misunderstanding?" The phone rang again. This time, Alex silenced it decisively. "We need a plan," he said, his voice steadier now. "I need to protect myself financially, legally, and emotionally," I added gently. Turner stood up. "I'm calling Paolo. Even though it's Saturday evening, he'll want to know about this situation immediately. Then first thing Monday, we'll contact your bank to secure your accounts." While Turner made the call, I made fresh coffee. 3. Evening had transformed from a carefully orchestrated trap to an emergency financial intervention. Alex sat at the kitchen counter, methodically listing all the accounts and services Catherine had access to. More than I'd imagined possible in the relatively short time they'd been together. "She was so integrated into my life," he said quietly, staring at the growing list. "Joint gym membership, shared cloud storage, connected payment apps. It's like she was systematically linking herself to everything." "That was strategic," I observed, pouring him a cup of coffee. "Creating entanglements? That would be complicated to unravel." "The rental deposit," Alex suddenly remembered. "We put down $5,000 to hold the house in Oak Ridge Estates. She handled the transaction, said it would be faster through her friend in real estate." Another red flag. "Do you have documentation of that payment?" He shook his head. "She said she'd handle the paperwork once everything was finalized. I trusted her." Trust. The word hung heavily between us. Catherine had exploited that trust masterfully, creating a web of financial connections that would require considerable effort to dismantle. Turner returned from his call with Paolo, his expression grave. "Paolo's coming over first thing tomorrow. He says we need to act quickly, especially regarding that personal loan and the house deposit." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of activity. Alex calling his credit card companies to remove Catherine as an authorized user, changing passwords on critical accounts, documenting suspicious transactions. By midnight, we'd established a preliminary firewall around his finances, though we knew more comprehensive measures would be needed in the coming days. "You should stay here tonight," I suggested as Alex's eyelids grew heavy with exhaustion and emotional drain. "Your old room is always ready." He nodded gratefully. "She might come to my apartment. I can't face her right now." I prepared his room, while Turner made one last round of checks on the doors and windows, a precaution that would have seemed paranoid just hours earlier, but now felt necessary. Catherine had revealed herself to be unpredictable and potentially vindictive. Before heading to bed, I stopped by Alex's room. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at his phone, which continued to accumulate missed calls and messages from Catherine. "I was going to marry her, Mom," he said, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I was going to build a life with her, have children with her." The thought sent a chill through me. How close we'd come to having Catherine permanently entwined in our family. "I know," I said softly, "but you discovered the truth before it was too late. That's what matters now." "Because of you and Dad," he acknowledged. "If you hadn't been paying attention, hadn't trusted your instincts." I sat beside him on the bed. "When you love someone, you notice things others might miss. We saw how Catherine affected you, how she gradually isolated you, made you dependent on her approval. That's not love, Alex. That's control. He was quiet for a moment. I keep wondering if any of it was real. Did she ever actually care about me at all? It was the question I couldn't answer with certainty. Had Catherine selected Alex purely for his potential access to our assets, or had there been some genuine affection mixed with her calculation? Either way, the damage was done. What matters is that your feelings were real, I said finally. That speaks to your capacity for love and trust. Don't let her take that from you. He nodded slowly, then looked up with a question that broke my heart. How do I ever trust myself? To judge someone's character again? One day at a time, I said simply, and maybe with a little help from the people who love you for exactly who you are, not for what you can provide them. As I closed his door, I heard his phone ping with yet another message from Catherine. Whatever manipulations, justifications, or threats she was sending, they would have to wait until morning. Tonight was for beginning to heal the wounds of betrayal. In our bedroom, Turner was already under the covers, looking more tired than I'd seen him in years. Do you think we got to him in time? He asked as I climbed into bed beside him. Financially, I mean. I hope so, I sighed. Paolo will help us figure out the damage tomorrow, but I'm more worried about the emotional impact. Alex invested everything in that relationship, not just money, but his whole heart. Turner reached for my hand in the darkness. He's stronger than you think, and he has us. Catherine didn't count on that, how solid we are as a family. That was her miscalculation. As I drifted toward sleep, I found myself reflecting on Catherine's words, her contempt for our suburban mediocrity, her disdain for the life we'd built. In her relentless pursuit of wealth and status, she had overlooked the true value of what she was trying to steal. Not just our assets, but the trust, love, and security that made those assets meaningful in the first place. Tomorrow would bring practical challenges, financial untangling, legal precautions, perhaps even confrontation. But tonight, I took comfort in knowing that what mattered most, our family bond, remained unbroken, and indeed, had proven stronger than even we had realized. Sunday morning arrived with an unexpected complication. Alex's phone had been silenced after Catherine's barrage of calls and messages the previous night, but mine rang just after 7. The number was unfamiliar. Mrs. Winters? This is Becky Hammond from Lakeside Estates. I hope I'm not calling too early, but I wanted to confirm your appointment for this afternoon to tour our facilities and discuss the accelerated admission package Catherine arranged. I sat up in bed, instantly alert. I'm sorry. What appointment? The 3 o'clock tour, she explained. Catherine Mercer finalized it yesterday morning. She mentioned it was a surprise for your son, part of the wedding planning process to ensure his peace of mind about your future care. A chill ran through me. Even after our confrontation, Catherine was still moving forward with her plans as if nothing had happened. Ms. Hammond, I need to be very clear, I said firmly. My husband and I have not authorized any tours or discussed any accelerated admission package. Catherine Mercer is no longer affiliated with our family in any way, and she has no authority to make arrangements on our behalf. There was a pause on the other end. Oh, I see. This is awkward. She actually put down a $2,000 deposit in your name to hold the deluxe assisted living suite. She said it was urgent to secure it before the waiting list grew longer. A deposit? Using what payment method? She provided a check from a joint account, Becky said, sounding increasingly uncomfortable. Made out from Alex and Catherine Winters. My blood ran cold. There is no such account. That check will bounce and you should alert your financial department immediately. In fact, I strongly suggest you contact your legal team as well. Ms. Mercer appears to be committing fraud. After ending the call, I woke Turner and quickly explained the situation. We found Alex in the kitchen, already making coffee, his expression haggard from a restless night. Catherine used a fraudulent check to put a deposit on a retirement home apartment for us, I told him without preamble. She's created a joint account in both your names somehow. Alex's face drained of color. That's impossible. We don't have a joint account yet. We were waiting until after the wedding. Check your wallet, Turner suggested. Is your checkbook there? Alex patted his pockets, then hurried to retrieve his jacket from the hallway. When he returned, his expression had darkened further. My checkbook is missing, and now that I think about it, Catherine asked to borrow my driver's license last week, said she needed to verify something for the wedding venue reservation. She had it for nearly 2 days before returning it. The implications were disturbing. With his driver's license and checkbook, Catherine could have opened fraudulent accounts, applied for credit cards, even taken out loans in his name. We need to contact the police, Turner said gravely. This goes beyond relationship deception. This is identity theft and fraud. Alex sank into a kitchen chair. I can't believe this is happening. Yesterday she was my fiancée, and today I'm considering filing a police report against her? Before we could respond, Turner's phone rang. It was Paolo, our financial advisor, already on his way to our house. Don't make any financial moves until I get there, he instructed. And if possible, gather all documentation of Alex's accounts and any joint arrangements with Catherine. While waiting for Paolo, the three of us worked at the kitchen table, compiling a comprehensive list of all potential financial exposures, accounts, credit cards, loan applications, the apartment lease, the house deposit, shared digital services. The picture that emerged was disturbing. Catherine had systematically inserted herself into every aspect of Alex's financial life, creating entanglements that would be challenging to unravel. Paolo arrived just before 9, grim-faced and carrying a laptop. After hearing our account of the previous evening and the morning's discovery, he sat up at the dining room table and began methodically working through Alex's financial picture. The immediate priority is freezing your credit, he explained, helping Alex contact the major credit bureaus. That will prevent her from opening any new accounts in your name. Then we need to review every existing account for unauthorized activity. As they worked, my phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. Robin, this has all been a terrible misunderstanding. Alex isn't answering my calls. Please, as a mother, help me fix this. Catherine. I showed the message to Turner, who shook his head in disbelief. The audacity, he muttered. After everything that happened last night, she's still trying to manipulate the situation. I blocked the number without responding. Midway through the financial review, the doorbell rang. Turner went to answer it, returning moments later with a tight expression. Catherine's parents are here, he said quietly. They're demanding to speak with Alex. Alex looked up, startled. Her parents? She told me they lived in Arizona. They weren't even coming to the wedding because of her father's health issues. Another lie exposed. I stood up. I'll handle this. In our front hallway stood a middle-aged couple I'd never seen before. The woman was a slightly older version of Catherine. Same poised posture, same calculating eyes. The man beside her looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Mrs. Winters, the woman began without introduction. I'm Julie. Mercer, Catherine's mother. We need to speak with Alex immediately. There's been a serious misunderstanding, and Catherine is absolutely distraught. I'm afraid Alex isn't available, I replied firmly. And after last night's revelations, I think any further communication should go through legal channels. Julie's expression hardened. Legal channels? For a simple lover's quarrel? That seems extremely excessive. This wasn't a lover's quarrel, Mrs. Mercer. Your daughter admitted to attempting to access our assets by pushing us into a retirement home against our will. She created fraudulent financial accounts. These are criminal matters. Criminal? Julie scoffed. Catherine was simply trying to help plan for your future care. Any miscommunication was clearly a result of your paranoia and interference in their relationship. I recognized the tactic immediately. The same deflection Catherine had attempted, now deployed by her mother. The apple hadn't fallen far from the tree. "Did you know your daughter set up an appointment at Lakeside Estates for us this afternoon?" I asked, using a fraudulent check from a non-existent joint account. Julie's expression flickered briefly, before resuming its indignant mask. "I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation." "I'm sure there is too," I agreed, "and the police will be very interested in hearing it. Now I need to ask you both to leave our property immediately." "This isn't over," Julie warned as Turner appeared at my side. "Catherine and Alex had plans, financial commitments. We expect those to be honored. Any legitimate financial obligations will be handled appropriately," Turner said. "But I suggest you advise your daughter to return Alex's checkbook and cease using his identity before the situation worsens for her." After they left, reluctantly and with further veiled threats, we returned to the dining room, where Paolo and Alex had overheard much of the exchange. "They're in on it," Alex said hollowly. "Her own parents are part of this scheme." Paolo looked grim. "Unfortunately, this type of financial predation is often a family business. Based on what I'm seeing here, and what you've told me about Polly's information regarding previous engagements, this appears to be a well-established pattern." He turned his laptop toward us, showing a credit report that revealed multiple recent inquiries and applications, far more than Alex had been aware of. In the past month alone, there have been applications for 3 new credit cards, a personal line of credit, and a second mortgage pre-approval, all using your information, Alex. Fortunately, most are still pending. We can dispute them, but you need to file a police report immediately for identity theft. The reality of Catherine's betrayal was expanding beyond emotional manipulation into a coordinated financial attack that could have long-lasting consequences for Alex's future. "How could I have been so blind?" Alex murmured, staring at the screen. "These people are professionals," Paolo assured him. "They know exactly how to gain trust and exploit it. But the good news is we've caught it relatively early. With immediate action, we can mitigate most of the damage." As Paolo continued working with Alex on security measures, I stepped outside to clear my head. The morning sun revealed spring flowers beginning to bloom in our front garden. The same garden Catherine had suggested Turner could no longer maintain due to his health issues. Standing there, I felt a surge of protective anger. Catherine and her family hadn't just targeted our assets, they'd attacked our independence, our dignity, our family bonds. They had nearly succeeded in convincing Alex that we needed to be managed, rather than respected. That realization strengthened my resolve. This wasn't just about protecting our financial resources anymore. It was about standing up for our family's autonomy and exposing Catherine's predatory scheme before she could target someone else. By Monday morning, the situation had escalated beyond our worst expectations. Alex had spent Sunday filing a police report for identity theft, disputing fraudulent accounts, and attempting to untangle the web of financial commitments Catherine had created. We'd hoped that formal legal measures would discourage further contact, but Catherine proved relentless. She appeared at our front door at 7:30 Monday morning, immaculately dressed in a business suit as if heading to an important meeting. Her eyes were carefully reddened, not enough to spoil her makeup, but sufficient to suggest she'd been crying. "I need to speak with Alex," she demanded when I answered. "This has gone far enough. Freezing accounts? Police reports? This is madness, Robin." "Alex isn't here," I said truthfully. "He had left early to meet with his bank's fraud department. And after what you've done, I suggest you communicate through legal channels only." Her composed facade cracked slightly. "What I've done? What about what you've done? You've poisoned Alex against me with your paranoid delusions. You've always resented our relationship, always been looking for ways to undermine me." "Catherine," I said calmly, We have recordings of you admitting your intentions. We have documentation of fraudulent financial activity. The retirement community has records of your unauthorized arrangements. This isn't about paranoia. It's about facts. Her expression hardened. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Alex and I had plans that would benefit everyone. Now you've forced my hand. Is that a threat? Turner asked, appearing beside me. Catherine's smile was cold. Simply an observation. Alex will regret letting his parents interfere in his future. When he realizes what he's lost, it will be too late. After she left, we contacted Alex immediately to warn him that Catherine might try to intercept him. He confirmed he was safe at the bank and would be coming directly home afterward. But Catherine wasn't finished. By noon, Alex called in a panic. She's emailed my entire company, he said, his voice tight with stress. She sent a message to my boss, my team, even the CEO, claiming I've had a mental health episode and have been making false accusations against her due to paranoid delusions. What? I gasped. It gets worse, Alex continued. She attached financial documents showing joint applications and claimed I'm now denying our arrangements because of my condition. She's suggesting they should be concerned about my access to company systems and data. Turner and I exchanged alarmed glances. Catherine was now actively trying to damage Alex's professional reputation and possibly even threaten his employment. Have you spoken with your manager? Turner asked. Yes, thankfully she knows me well enough to be skeptical, but HR has still requested a meeting, and this has circulated widely. People are talking. Alex's voice cracked slightly. She's trying to destroy my credibility professionally, not just personally. This was the breaking point. Catherine had crossed from manipulation and financial predation into active character assassination. She wasn't simply trying to extract assets anymore. She was seeking revenge. As soon as Alex arrived home, we convened an emergency family meeting with Paolo and Clark, who had offered his legal expertise despite not specializing in this area. The conclusion was unanimous. We needed to take decisive action beyond defensive measures. We have two options, Clark explained. Continue responding reactively to each new attack, or go on the offensive with everything we have. What does going on the offensive entail? I asked. Compiling all evidence, the recordings, financial documentation, communication with Lakeside, estates, testimony from Polly about previous incidents, and presenting it not just to the police, but potentially to the district attorney's office. This could be prosecuted as an organized fraud scheme, and send copies of the evidence to her employers, colleagues, and social circle, Paolo added grimly. Make it clear that any further attacks on Alex's reputation will result in her own reputation being comprehensively exposed. It felt aggressive, even vindictive, completely contrary to how Turner and I had conducted ourselves throughout our lives. But Catherine had demonstrated she wouldn't stop until she'd extracted what she wanted, or inflicted maximum damage trying. Alex, who had been quiet throughout the discussion, finally spoke. Do it, he said firmly. All of it. She's left me no choice. Are you sure? I asked gently. This will be public. Messy. I'm sure, he nodded, his expression resolute though pained. She's shown exactly who she is and what she's willing to do. If we don't stop her completely, she'll just find another family to target, another person to manipulate and exploit. Turner reached over to squeeze Alex's shoulder. We'll handle this together, as a family. In that moment, despite the chaos Catherine had created, I felt an unexpected sense of clarity and purpose. The trap she had set for our family had ultimately failed because of the very thing she had underestimated: the strength of our genuine bonds, our willingness to protect each other, and our commitment to the truth. We would face whatever came next, not with Catherine's calculated manipulation, but with honest confrontation of the facts, however uncomfortable they might be. The next morning, we gathered around our dining room table. The same table where Catherine had revealed her true nature just days earlier. Now it was covered with documents, printed emails, bank statements, and legal forms. Clark had arrived early with a colleague who specialized in fraud cases, and Paolo had brought comprehensive financial records showing the extent of Catherine's machinations. Based on what we've compiled, Clark's colleague explained, we have sufficient evidence for a strong case of attempted fraud, identity theft, and potentially emotional abuse through financial coercion. The pattern established by her previous relationships strengthens the case considerably. What specifically are we seeking? Turner asked, always the practical one. First, a restraining order to prevent further contact or harassment, Clark replied. Second, official fraud charges that will create a record of her activities, making it harder for her to target others in the future. And third, financial restitution for any actual damages incurred. Alex nodded slowly, reviewing the paperwork before him. The young man who had once looked at Catherine with unquestioning adoration now studied evidence of her deception with clear-eyed resolve. And you're certain this won't backfire? I asked. She's already shown she's willing to attack Alex's professional reputation. That's why timing and thoroughness are critical, Clark's colleague emphasized. We don't just file charges. We simultaneously distribute a factual, documented account to all parties she's contacted with her false narratives. We make it clear that any further defamation will result in additional legal consequences. As we finalized our approach, Alex's phone buzzed with a text. His expression darkened as he read it. "Catherine again?" Turner asked. Alex nodded. "She says if I don't meet her to resolve this misunderstanding today, she'll be forced to share concerns about my mental stability with my company's largest client." He looked up, his face pale but determined. "She's escalating the threats." "Forward." That message to Clark, I said immediately. It's additional evidence of harassment and extortion. While Clark documented the latest threat, I made fresh coffee. My hands trembled slightly as I poured the cups. Despite our preparation and the strength of our evidence, I couldn't shake a lingering fear. Catherine had proven herself to be resourceful, manipulative, and vindictive. What else might she do when truly cornered? "There's something else we need to consider," Paolo said gravely as I distributed the coffee. Based on the financial analysis, Catherine appears to have targeted at least 3 previous families with similar methods. In each case, she walked away with significant assets, investments in phantom business ventures, loans that were never repaid, expensive gifts that were never returned. "Your point?" Turner asked. "My point is that she's likely accumulated substantial resources from these activities, resources she could use to hire aggressive legal representation or even private investigators to dig for compromising information." The thought sent a chill through me. We were ordinary people, a retired teacher, an accountant, a software developer. We had lived honest, modest lives, but we weren't naive enough to believe that truth automatically prevails against a determined adversary with resources. "So what are you suggesting?" Alex asked. "That we back down? Let her get away with this?" Paolo shook his head. "Not at all. I'm suggesting we need to be prepared for an aggressive counterattack. She won't go down without a fight." As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Turner checked the security camera we'd installed just yesterday, a precaution that now seemed prescient. "It's Catherine's parents," he reported grimly, "and someone else. Looks like a professional of some kind." Clark moved to the window for a better angle. "That's Martin Reynolds," he said with surprise. "Aggressive, litigation attorney from downtown. Handles a lot of high-profile cases." My stomach knotted. Catherine and her family were indeed escalating, bringing legal firepower to our doorstep in an attempt to intimidate us. "Don't answer it," Clark advised. "They're trying to catch you off guard, deliver threats or demands without your counsel present." But as we watched through the window, Catherine's mother noticed the movement of the curtain. She pointed directly at the house, her expression triumphant rather than concerned. The message was clear. They knew we were home, knew we were watching, and were demonstrating their ability to bring the fight to our doorstep. After several minutes, they left a thick envelope wedged in the door and departed. Clark retrieved it. Cautiously. Cease and desist letter, he confirmed after scanning the contents. Demanding Alex retract all false accusations, unfreeze joint accounts, and resume wedding plans or face legal action for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and elder interference in a relationship. Elder interference? I repeated incredulously. It's not a real legal term, Clark's colleague explained. They're creating intimidating language to suggest you're being ageist in your objections to the relationship. Alex stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Enough. I'm done being manipulated and threatened. He looked around, at all of us, his expression resolute. File everything, today. All the evidence, all the reports, all the counterclaims, and send copies to every person and institution they've contacted with their lies. The decision hung in the air for a moment. A point of no return. Once initiated, there would be no quiet resolution, no private settlement. This would become a matter of public record, with all the messiness and exposure that entailed. Turner reached for my hand under the table, squeezing it gently. I knew we were thinking the same thing. Our quiet retirement had transformed into something we never could have anticipated. But some battles need to be fought, no matter how uncomfortable. Are you absolutely certain? I asked Alex one final time. He looked at me, a new steadiness in his eyes. I am. We can't let her do this to anyone else, and I'm not going to spend my life looking over my shoulder, waiting for her next attack. With that, the decision was made. Clark and his colleague began preparing the necessary filings, while Paolo continued documenting the financial evidence. The dining room table that had hosted so many family celebrations over the years now served as the command center for our family's most challenging battle. The weeks following our legal counteroffensive passed in a blur of paperwork, meetings, and tense waiting. Catherine's initial response was exactly what we'd anticipated: aggressive denial followed by threats of countersuits. Her attorney filed motions to dismiss our claims, portraying Alex as unstable and Turner and me as controlling parents interfering in a loving relationship. But the evidence spoke for itself. The recording of Catherine's unguarded comments about working on the old lady and claiming our house was as good as ours. Documentation from Lakeside Estates confirming her unauthorized attempts to arrange our transition to assisted living, bank records showing fraudulent account applications, and most damaging of all, Polly's detailed testimony about Catherine's previous engagements and financial schemes, supported by statements from 2 other former fiancés who came forward after learning of our case. 27 days after filing our claims, we received the news we'd been waiting for. The district attorney's office had decided to pursue fraud and identity theft charges against Catherine. The restraining order had been granted, prohibiting her from contacting any of us or coming within 500 feet of our homes or workplaces. It's over, Turner said quietly as we sat on the back porch that evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Legally, at least. I nodded, feeling relief, but also a lingering sadness. The legal battle may be over, but the healing process is just beginning. Inside, Alex was on a call with his manager. The company had conducted its own investigation after receiving our evidence package and had entirely dismissed Catherine's claims about his mental health. His professional reputation had been preserved, but the emotional damage remained. When he joined us on the porch, carrying a tray with 3 glasses of iced tea, I could see both weariness and relief in his face. HR officially closed their inquiry, he reported, setting the tray on the small table between our chairs. My manager said they're implementing new security protocols because of this, tighter controls on financial systems access, more verification steps for external communications. Apparently, I'm not the first person to be targeted this way. That's good, Turner said, accepting a glass. Something positive coming from all this. Alex sat down in the third chair, stretching his long legs out before him. I keep thinking about those other men Polly mentioned. Catherine's previous targets. He hesitated over the word. I've been wondering if I should reach out to them somehow. I studied my son's profile, noting how his features had sharpened in recent weeks, the boyish softness replaced by a more deliberate gravity. Would that help you heal, do you think? He considered the question carefully. Maybe. Not to rehash the details. I know enough about those already. But just to understand how they moved forward, how they trusted again. Trust. That was the heart of it, wasn't it? Catherine had damaged something fundamental in Alex, his ability to believe in the authenticity of others' affection, his confidence in his own judgment of character. Time helps, Turner offered. And perspective. What happened? Wasn't a reflection of any failing on your part, son. Catherine targets kind, trusting people precisely because those qualities make her schemes possible. I know that logically, Alex admitted. But emotionally, I keep replaying every conversation, every moment, looking for the signs I missed. I reached over to touch his arm lightly. That's natural. But at some point, you have to forgive yourself for being the good person she took advantage of. Your capacity for trust and generosity isn't a weakness. It's one of your greatest strengths. We sat in comfortable silence as darkness settled around us. Fireflies began to appear in the garden, their gentle blinking like stars come down to earth. It struck me that this was the first truly peaceful evening we'd experienced in months. No urgent calls to attorneys, no new financial discoveries, no strategic planning sessions. I've been thinking about moving, Alex said suddenly. Not right away, but eventually. Too many memories in that apartment, too many plans made that were never really mine. You know you can stay here as long as you need, I offered. He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes for the first time in weeks. I know, and I'm grateful. But I think part of moving forward means making new choices, creating spaces that are entirely my own. Whatever you decide, we're here, Turner assured. No pressure, no timeline. As the evening deepened around us, I found myself reflecting on the unexpected journey we'd traveled. What had begun as subtle unease about Alex's fiancé had evolved into a full-blown crisis that had tested our family's bonds and resilience. Catherine had intended to divide us, to position herself as the primary influence in Alex's life while isolating him from our concerns. Instead, she had inadvertently strengthened our connection, reminding all of us what truly mattered. The financial damage, though significant, could be repaired over time. Alex had lost the loan amount and various fees, totaling nearly $50,000. His credit would require monitoring for years to ensure no lingering fraudulent accounts surfaced. But these were manageable problems with clear solutions. The emotional damage was harder to quantify. Alex had lost not just money, but confidence, trust, and nearly a year of his life invested in a relationship built on deception. Those wounds would take longer to heal. Yet as I watched him that evening, engaged in quiet conversation with his father about rebuilding the garden shed, a simple, practical project they could work on together, I saw glimmers of the path forward. Catherine had failed in her ultimate goal. She had not claimed our assets, had not driven a wedge between us, had not reduced us to dependent, managed elders funding her lifestyle. Instead, we were here, together on our back porch, planning small projects, sharing simple moments, gradually reclaiming our sense of security and peace. The house Catherine had coveted remained our family anchor. The retirement savings she had targeted continued to support our modest, contented lifestyle. And most importantly, the son she had attempted to manipulate was finding his way back to himself, surrounded by authentic love that asked for nothing in return. "I think I'm ready to let my anger go," Alex said as the night grew cooler. "Not forget, not excuse what she did, but stop letting it consume so much of my energy." Turner nodded approvingly. "That's wisdom, son. Not forgiveness for her sake, but release for yours." In that moment, I knew we would be all right. The healing had truly begun. 6 months passed, bringing autumn's crisp air and golden light to our neighborhood. The legal proceedings against Catherine had concluded with a plea agreement. She would avoid jail time but was required to make financial restitution to Alex and her previous victims, complete community service, and undergo monitoring that restricted her ability to engage in financial transactions without oversight. We learned through Clark that Catherine and her parents had moved to another state, presumably to start fresh, where their reputation hadn't been tarnished. The thought occasionally sent a shiver through me. Other unsuspecting families who might encounter them, other trusting individuals who might be drawn into their schemes. But we had done what we could by creating a legal record of their activities. Alex had indeed found a new apartment, a bright corner unit in a renovated historic building downtown. He'd furnished it entirely with new items, carefully selected to reflect his own tastes rather than the expensive showpiece aesthetic Catherine had pushed for. Turner and I had helped him move in, sharing pizza on the floor when the furniture delivery was delayed, laughing together in a way that felt both familiar and newly precious. "You seem more like yourself these days," I observed one Sunday morning as Alex helped Turner rake leaves in our backyard. He had been coming over regularly, not from obligation or habit, but seemingly from genuine desire to spend time with us. "I am," he agreed, leaning on his rake. "More like myself than I've been in a long time, actually. Even before Catherine." "How so?" Turner asked, pausing in his work. Alex considered the question. "I think I spent years trying to find someone to complete some picture I had in my head. The successful career, the perfect relationship, the life that looks good from the outside. Catherine seemed to fit that picture so perfectly." He shook his head ruefully. "But it was all surface, no foundation." "And now?" I prompted. "Now I'm focusing on what actually feels right, not what looks right. My job is going well. I got that promotion last month. I'm reconnecting with old friends I'd drifted away from. And I'm not rushing to find someone new just to fill a space in my life." As if on cue, the back gate opened, and a woman in jeans and a flannel shirt entered carrying a tray of coffee cups. "I thought you all might need a caffeine boost," she called cheerfully. The line at Henderson's was out the door, but worth it for their pumpkin spice blend. This was Robin, a children's librarian Alex had met at a community volunteer event 2 months ago. Not a girlfriend, just friends, they both insisted, but someone whose company he genuinely enjoyed. She helped distribute the coffee, easily, joining our conversation about the unseasonably warm weather and the neighborhood Halloween decorations. What struck me most was how natural it all felt. No calculated charm, no strategic compliments, no subtle probing about our finances or health. Just authentic interaction, genuine interest, and the simple pleasure of shared moments. Later, as Turner and I washed lunch dishes while Alex and Robin took his old college frisbee to the park, I found myself reflecting on the contrast. "She seems nice," I said carefully, not wanting to put any pressure or expectations on this new friendship. "She does," Turner agreed. "But more importantly, Alex seems comfortable. Like he can just be himself without performing or proving anything." That was it exactly. The difference wasn't just in Robin versus Catherine, it was in Alex himself. He had found his way back to authenticity, to valuing genuine connection over glossy appearance. The painful chapter Catherine had introduced into our lives was truly closing. In its place, a new beginning was taking shape. One built on stronger foundations of self-knowledge, clearer boundaries, and deeper appreciation for the quiet wealth of genuine relationships. 1 year to the day after our confrontation with Catherine, Turner and I celebrated our 41st wedding anniversary with a small gathering in our backyard. Nothing extravagant, just good food, soft music, and the company of people we truly cared about. Alex had insisted on handling the arrangements, transforming our patio with string lights, and arranging for our favorite local restaurant to cater. As twilight settled around us, I found myself sitting beside Alex on the old porch swing, watching Turner chat animatedly with Paolo about some new fishing technique he was eager to try. Robin was there too, helping serve cake to our neighbors, her easy laughter blending with the gentle background music. "Happy anniversary, Mom," Alex said, handing me a small wrapped package. "Something I've been wanting to give you for a while." Inside was a delicate silver frame holding a photograph I hadn't seen in years. Turner and me on our wedding day, young and radiant, facing a future we couldn't possibly have imagined. "I found it when I was going through some old albums," Alex explained. "You both look so certain, like you knew exactly what you were stepping into." I laughed softly. We had no idea. We were just two people who trusted each other enough to build a life together, day by day. "That's what I've come to realize," Alex said, his voice thoughtful. "What Catherine couldn't understand, what her whole family couldn't grasp, is that real wealth isn't about assets or accounts or property values. It's about having people in your life who stand by you without calculating what they'll get in return." I nodded, my throat tightening with emotion. That's a wisdom some people never gain. "You know what's strange?" Alex continued. "In a twisted way, I'm almost grateful for what happened. Not for the deception or the financial mess, obviously, but for the clarity it eventually brought." "What kind of clarity?" I asked, genuinely curious. "About what matters, about what love actually looks like." He gestured toward Turner, still deep in conversation across the yard. "Dad never once made me feel like I'd failed or been foolish. He just rolled up his sleeves and helped me solve the problem. And you trusted your instincts when something felt wrong, even when it would have been easier to stay silent." His words warmed me more than any anniversary gift could have. "That's what family does?" "Not all families," Alex observed. "Catherine's parents were part of her scheme. They saw relationships as transactions, opportunities for gain. I can't imagine growing up with that worldview." We sat in companionable silence for a moment, the swing creaking gently beneath us. In the soft evening light, our modest backyard felt like the richest place in the world. "The irony is," I finally said, "Catherine thought she was targeting us because of what we had. The house, the retirement accounts, the stability. But what protected us from her scheme was something she couldn't see or value: our connection to each other, our willingness to have difficult conversations, our trust in each other's judgment." Alex nodded. "The very things she dismissed as suburban mediocrity were our true wealth all along." As the evening deepened into night, guests gradually departed with warm hugs and promises to get together soon. When only Alex and Robin remained, helping us gather the last of the plates and glasses, I felt a deep contentment settle over me. The past year had brought challenges we'd never anticipated: legal battles, financial recovery, emotional healing. But it had also brought gifts, renewed family bonds, deeper appreciation for our quiet, meaningful life, and perhaps most importantly, the knowledge that we had faced a significant threat together and emerged stronger. Catherine had entered our lives intending to exploit what she saw as our vulnerability: our age, our trusting nature, our dedication to family. Instead, she had inadvertently revealed our greatest strengths. As Turner and I stood in our doorway, waving goodbye to Alex and Robin as they headed toward their cars, he slipped his arm around my waist. "Not bad for a couple of old people with underutilized assets," he murmured with a wry smile. I laughed, leaning into his familiar embrace. Not bad at all. What Catherine had never understood, could never understand, was that the true measure of a well-lived life had nothing to do with balance sheets or property values. It was found in moments like these, standing beside someone who had walked with you through decades of ordinary days and extraordinary challenges, facing whatever came next with love, integrity, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what truly matters. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.